Hey everyone, Matt here on the Vinyl Head UK channel, and I'm back with another vinyl appreciation video for you guys. So we're going to jump back into the world of thrash metal, probably the subgenre of metal that I appreciate the most, that I like the most. Definitely most of the bands that I'm a fan of stem out of the thrash metal scene, definitely. But I've got a band, I've got a debut album by a band that I personally think are pretty underrated in the thrash metal circle. They're a Canadian band, you've probably heard of them. And that, of course, is Annihilator with their debut record, Alison Hell. It is classed as a thrash metal classic, but I still think they're kind of underappreciated to a degree. Often when we talk about thrash, we talk about the big four: Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth. But outside of the big four, you know, we talk about bands like Creator, Destruction, Sodom, those German bands. We talk about bands like Exodus, Overkill, Testament. But we don't really always talk that much about Annihilator, which is a shame because I think they are a brilliant band. Jeff Waters, who pretty much is Mr. Annihilator, is an incredible songwriter, guitarist, musician, all of the above. But this is a debut record by them. As I say, it is still considered a bit of a thrash metal classic. I think Annihilator have put out some very strong records, especially early on. Now, this was released in 1989. It was put out by Roadrunner Records. This isn't a 1989 pressing. This is a 2018 Dutch pressing put out by Music on Vinyl. It came in the shrink wrapping with a hype sticker saying this is an audio files version. I somewhat agree with that. It sounds good. We'll come on to that a little bit later. But it was released at an interesting time back in '89. A thrash band putting out their debut record at that time was interesting because at that period we'd already seen quite a number of really significant thrash metal albums being put out by, you know, the big four. When you look at stuff like Master of Puppets and Rain in Blood, Rust in Peace, you know, even the German bands were putting out big records at the time. Testament, Overkill, all of those that I've mentioned, Bonded by Blood, by Exodus, all big records that had already come out. And then following that, at a time where, you know, we were going into a period where thrash metal was not dying, but it definitely wasn't quite at the forefront that it was during the early to mid 80s. It was a time, as we go into the early 90s, where the thrash metal bands weren't putting out their best material. Some of the bands were changing sound, so it was an interesting time for a young Canadian band to pop up with a debut record that is purely thrash and technical thrash at that. Now, as I mentioned, this is pretty much Jeff Waters' band. Annihilator have gone through many lineup changes. It's quite the revolving door with this band, but Jeff Waters, being his band, he has always stayed put. And of course, he features on this. Is an interesting sort of thing with their lineup, which I'll come on to. Let me show you the artwork and everything first. As we always do, we can look at that and appreciate this lovely artwork that we have. So I think it's quite a cool picture. So we've got that Annihilator logo at the top. It kind of reminds me of some other band's logos, a little bit of Voivod maybe, a bit of Exciter, that sort of font and that sort of style. And then very bold Alison Hell title down the bottom. And then we see Alice herself. She's on the stairway. She has lots of dolls lying around her. But look at this door. We have another one looking alive and pretty evil, casting that huge shadow across next to Alice. It is somewhat of a concept-y album, talking about Alice's struggles and whatnot. And then we have that huge Annihilator logo going down the side. A picture of the 5, which I will come on to, as I say. It's quite interesting with the lineup and what actually happened with it. And then our track listing, Roadrunner, and all our usual production credits and whatnot down there. Inside the inner sleeve isn't all that exciting. There is a lyric sheet though, which I will show you first. Again, nothing too exciting. It's just basically black paper with the lyrics on there. The other side, Annihilator, and more pictures of the band, individual pictures, and thanks. I quite like this. If you can see that, it's got a big thanks to, and then it says extra large bacon and mushroom thanks to. Right there. The inner sleeve is pretty boring. It's just black. There's nothing to it. It's black. And then it's 180 gram. It's quite an old school looking label there with the old Roadrunner Records label. Alison Hell, and then the track listing. That's actually side 2 that I'm showing you there. But side 1 is exactly the same. Quite old school looking there. This was brand new on arrival in the shrink, as I say. So it's in good nick, very good condition. There's no bends or any damage to the corner of the sleeve. The record plays really nicely, no background noise, anything like that. So let's come on to that lineup. I keep saying it was quite interesting, and I'll tell you why. So we have, you can see our lineup right here. So Jeff Waters, who I've spoken about already, on guitar. Now Jeff Waters actually played lead guitar, he did rhythm guitar, he played bass on this. He did backing vocals, he produced it, and he mixed it. As I say, Annihilator is very much Jeff Waters' sort of project. It's very much his thing. It's almost like a solo project, but he just brings in other people to feature on it. Annihilator sometimes doesn't feel like a band. It feels like Jeff Waters' his thing. Over on vocals here, we can see Randy Rampage. Now, Randy Rampage was actually one of the founding members of DOA, of all bands, you know. So he's gone from DOA to a full-on thrash band, which is quite interesting. I'll come on to his vocals a little bit more. I don't think they're the strongest vocals on a thrash record that you'll hear. I'm going to jump over to Ray Hartmann over here on the drums. Because if we look at these 3, that is what Annihilator was on this record. Jeff Waters, Randy Rampage, and Ray Hartmann. They were a 3-piece. As I say, Jeff Waters did lead, rhythm, bass, backing vocals, everything. So these 2 weren't actually featured on this record. We have Anthony Greenham on guitar and Wayne Darley on bass. Now, the reason these guys were featured on the artwork and credited onto Alison Hell was actually made by Roadrunner. It was their decision to feature these guys and make it into a full band as such, you know, rather than just the 3 guys. So that is why it credits them as well. Wayne Darley actually did do some backing vocals on the record, but that's all he did. He didn't play bass. And then Anthony Greenham didn't play anything guitar-wise on it. They came in after Alison Hell had been finished. They were out on the tour. But yeah, quite an interesting little fun fact, as I know you guys like. Randy Rampage actually went on to leave the band after the Alison Hell tour. He rejoined for the 99 Criteria for a Black Widow album. So he did come back and feature on a studio album back in 1999, so 10 years later. And he does feature on a couple of live records and compilation records and that, but he did do a couple of actual studio albums with the band. So, track listing. Let's go through it as normal. So it doesn't differentiate side 1 and side 2 here. But I will tell you what is on each side. So, Crystal Ann, Alison Hell, Welcome to Your Death, W.T.Y.D, Wicked Mystic, and Burns Like a Buzzsaw Blade. Make up side 1 or side A. Flip it over. Word Salad, Schizos, Are Never Alone, parts 1 and 2. Ligeia, and Human Insecticide. Make up side 2 or side B. So, this is quite the record of 2 sides, literally. The first side is all about pretty much pummeling thrash. The second side is a lot more technical. We've still got a lot of thrash going on and those fast thrash riffs, but it's slightly more technical. I know people have compared this to maybe early day Megadeth because you've got that technical side to it. I kind of can hear it, I kind of don't hear it at the same time. But I understand why people credit it to sound like earlier technical Megadeth. Megadeth have always been a slightly more technical band than, say, Metallica or Anthrax, I feel. And probably even Slayer to a degree. But yes, so Crystal Ann kicks off. It's a nice acoustic track. There's no vocals on it. It's an acoustic intro. It's about 1.5 minutes. It almost kind of goes into a classical acoustic feel to a degree. We learn straight away though that Jeff Waters is a very accomplished, incredible guitarist. We learn that just from this 1.5 minutes of acousticness. But then we go into what is kind of a title track, Alison Hell rather than Alice in Hell. I guess it's kind of a title track there. It's a different kind of feel. It's not an out and out thrash track as well. It's got this catchy riff to it. It's quite atmospheric. There are some slower parts. The dynamics range. It's not just sort of balls to the wall, thrash in your face, riff, da 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 da. There's more to it. And I like it. It's a catchy track. We all know it. Or, you know, if you're into your thrash, you're probably going to know this track. It's always a nice live staple of the live set list. I've only ever seen Annihilator once, and that was on a support slot. So they only got like half an hour or so. Not long enough, especially with a band with such an extensive back catalogue. This must have been in about 2008. So obviously, you know, they've produced a few more albums since then. But, you know, for those classic early Annihilator records like Alison Hell and Never Neverland and all that, you know, I wanted to hear more. But I hopefully will get to see Annihilator again at some point. It'd be nice to see him on a proper UK tour. But yeah, it is a slightly different track. Going into Welcome to Your Death, Wicked Mystic, and Burns Like a Buzzsaw Blade, this is where the riffage and the thrash really do start. I say they're underrated. I listened to some of the riffs on these tracks and they sound so good. You want to get up and bang your head and mosh and everything. They are so solid. And the solos, as I say, Jeff Waters is a phenomenal guitarist. He doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think. He is incredibly talented and incredibly gifted. And his work is so good. The solos are mesmerizing. The riffs are so tight. Now, as I say, the first half is just pretty much just pummeling riffs, the thrash, the double pedal. The second half, we still get that, but it is a little bit more technical. There's a little bit more substance going on in some of these tracks. You know, Word Salad, Schizos, definitely there is a lot going on, more technical. The technicality is starting to shine through. Human Insecticide, the last track, we come back to kind of how it sounds on the first half, more in your face, sort of ABC thrash. You know what you're going to get from it. It's not massively technical. But it works. It really works. Some of these riffs are fantastic. We always look at these, you know, you see YouTube videos and whatever of the top 50 metal riffs or the top 50 thrash metal riffs. And Annihilator do always feature on there because the riffs are so good. Jeff Waters is an exceptional musician. He really knows what he's doing. And, you know, he might have had a revolving door of musicians and band members, but he is the core of a band, and as long as he's doing what he's doing, you'll have a pretty solid Annihilator record, I think, based around that. Randy Rampage from DOA, who is now with Annihilator for this record, I don't think he is strong enough as a thrash vocalist. When you listen to some of the bands I've mentioned earlier, and their vocalists, so Dave Mustaine, Bobby Blitz of Overkill, Chuck Billy with Testament, you know, Hetfield from Metallica, Joey Belladonna, Anthrax. These guys initially stand out with their vocal style, and they're unique and they're recognizable. You know their voice when you hear it, and it is substantial. You remember it. I don't think you really do with Randy Rampage. I think some of the choruses, his vocals sit very low. It's almost kind of hard to hear what he's actually singing about. I think the production on this is very good anyway. For a debut record, if you listen to some of the debut records by the other thrash bands, they're kind of tinny sounding and they haven't found their sort of footing, production-wise. But this is very good production. But yeah, he does sit quite low on the choruses, and it's kind of hard to pick out really what he's saying. And he just doesn't stand out. I just don't remember him massively when I listen to this as I do with, you know, some of the others like Bobby Blitz. I think there is an element of Bobby Blitz sounding to his voice, to Randy Rampage's voice, but he's definitely not as strong as the Overkill stuff. And then the drums as well. I'm always going to comment on the drums because I'm a drummer. Ray Hartmann, can't knock him. He is a very good drummer. But I feel I'd like a bit more from the drumming. A lot of it just followed the riffing. His drums didn't deviate away and do their own thing and create some memorable drum moments. It was pretty much a double pedal. I was just following along with Jeff Waters riffing. It was almost very in sync, which is fine. You don't want to be out of sync with these, you know, fast thrash riffs because it's going to sound weird and you're going to lose that mechanical nature to the riffing, especially with thrash. But I kind of wanted him to come away a little bit and do some other stuff as well, to stand forward a little bit and stand out a little bit. You know, there's some really great drummers in thrash metal and metal full stop. And he is a good drummer. He is a good drummer, definitely a good drummer. But I want to hear a little bit more coming through on some of those tracks. It is very locked in and he seems to can't escape away from the riffing and Jeff Waters playing. I don't know if because of Jeff Waters having so much involvement in everything within this, that is his decision to have the drums do that, and it kind of held back Ray Hartmann a little bit. I don't know. That might have been the case. I might be wrong. But apart from that, I can't fault it. There are so many great riffs on this. If you go and listen to any live recordings, whether that's on YouTube or CD or whatever, you'll hear how many great riffs they have written. We always talk about, you know, guys that produce phenomenal amount of riffs, like Tony Iommi, for example. But I think that Jeff Waters does just that in the thrash metal world. So this is a really good, solid debut. The sound of it is solid. As I say, on that hype sticker, it talked about audiophile standard. And yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think it's the best record in terms of sound overall, like pressing overall in sound. I don't think it's the best, but I think it's up there. In terms of the thrash stuff that I've picked up, and I've picked up a few thrash metal records already, I think it is probably sitting nearer the top, if not on the top of those thrash records. It's loud. There is a lot of dynamics. Jeff Waters' solos are really coming through. As I say, I wish the vocals would sit up a little bit more, but that's more to do with the production rather than the pressing of this vinyl itself. That's a production sort of fault, if you want to call it that. I don't know. But in terms of how this sounds, yes, it is very solid. It's got a big sound stage. Dynamics are really nice. It does not sound digital. There is more of an analog feel to this, which I like. I'd like to think this is straight from the analog tapes, even though it is a reissue from 2018. I'd like to think they've kept it from the analogs. And with those riffs, I wouldn't want them quiet and, you know, digital sounding. I want those riffs to pummel around my room, pummel the room down, you know. I want to see dust coming off the walls from where it's rocking the foundations of the bricks of my house. It's what it deserves. That's what, you know, I always say, turn it up. Rock and metal, turn it up. It needs to be played loud, you know. And it is loud. It is a loud record. You don't need to whack your volume up too much for it to be at a nice, good, loud volume. We don't lose clarity. Sibilance, distortion, we don't really need to worry about that. That isn't present, which is good. Of course, that's good. And it makes this record sound even better. It's a great debut record. It came at a funny time in metal where thrash was a little bit more in decline with the quality of what was coming out. But it was the start of a good, solid run of great Annihilator material. It needs to be part of your thrash collection. It needs to be part of your metal collection. I think it is a very strong record. And I think Jeff Waters alone has gone on to influence probably many a younger guitarist. But we see in bands now, you know, I've heard of bands like Trivium that have been very influenced by Annihilator. Many more bands, I'm sure, probably were as well. But yes, go and pick this one up. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thank you as always for checking this video out. Don't forget to go and subscribe. Go and hit the like button. Go and hit that bell for all the notifications, else Alice will be looking for you. And whatever the hell that is will definitely come looking for you if you don't do that. So remember, go and hit all of those. I'll be back with plenty more content on the channel real soon. Go and buy vinyl. Go and listen to vinyl. I'm Matt, and I'll catch you guys later.